Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that most people don't understand. Love doesn't always look like what you expect. Some people express love with fireworks, hugs, and poetic declarations. Others, they love in silence. They love in hesitation. They love from a distance. And I want to talk about one of the most misunderstood ways people love through the lens of avoidant attachment. You see, an avoidant doesn't run because they don't care. They pull away because they care too much and it terrifies them. They were taught that closeness meant risk, that vulnerability meant weakness. So they built walls not to keep you out, but to keep themselves safe. But here's the secret. When an avoidant starts leaning in, even a little, that's love. When they text you back faster than usual, when they share a personal story, when they sit next to you instead of across from you, that's not just behavior, that's courage. Because for them, connection isn't natural, it's a war inside their head and heart. And when they choose to stay, that's their version of I love you. Now, let's be clear, this isn't about tolerating emotional unavailability or becoming someone's therapist. It's about recognizing when a person is growing for you, even if it's inch by inch. If an avoidant shows up when it's hard, opens up when it's uncomfortable, shows closeness when their instinct is to run, then listen closely, that is love. Raw, real, brave love, and your job isn't to fix them, your job is to see them. To celebrate their efforts, not just their results, to hold them accountable with compassion, not control. Because the truth is, the people who are hardest to love often need it the most. So when an avoidant reaches out, even awkwardly, when they say, I miss you, but fumble the delivery, when they stay in the room instead of walking away, that is their love language. Don't miss it because it's not wrapped the way you expected. Avoidants fear intimacy, not because they don't care, but because they care deeply and are afraid to be hurt. On the surface, it may seem like they are cold, distant, or uninterested, but what lies beneath is often a complex emotional landscape shaped by early experiences of abandonment, rejection, or conditional love. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, closeness triggers a deep, unconscious threat. It's not that they don't want love, it's that love, especially when it becomes real and vulnerable, exposes them to pain they've learned to guard against with everything they have. When an avoidant starts to feel emotionally close to someone, their nervous system reacts almost like a fire alarm going off. That warmth, that connection, which others may see as comforting, feels overwhelming. It threatens their sense of control, independence, and emotional safety, so they retreat. Not because the person they care about has done something wrong, but because their internal wiring tells them closeness equals danger. It's a protective reflex, not a rejection. These individuals are often mislabeled as cold or emotionally unavailable, but those labels miss the mark. An avoidant person can love with intensity. They can be loyal, generous, and deeply caring. They often show their love through actions rather than words, through fixing things, giving space, solving problems. But when it comes to emotional vulnerability, expressing feelings, sitting in feelings, comfort, or asking for connection, they freeze. Their mind tells them it's safer to be alone than to risk being hurt by someone they've let in. What many people don't see is the internal struggle avoidants go through. Every time they pull away, there's a storm happening inside. They feel the urge to connect and simultaneously the urge to protect themselves. And often they are flooded with guilt or confusion because they know their behavior can be hurtful, yet they feel powerless to change it without deep self-awareness and healing. In fact, the more they care, the more overwhelmed they may become. Real emotional intimacy puts pressure on their defenses, and it can feel like standing on the edge of a cliff. Love is exactly what they want, but they've been conditioned to believe that love isn't safe. So their heart says yes, while their survival instinct says run. The more invested they become, the more likely they are to subconsciously sabotage the connection just to avoid the pain of loss they've long feared. Understanding avoidance means recognizing this contradiction. They're not heartless. They're not incapable of love. They're afraid of being seen, afraid of being dependent, afraid of being hurt in the very ways they were hurt before. The paradox is that the fear of pain comes from how deeply they can actually feel. The more they love, the more it costs them emotionally, so they protect themselves the only way they've learned, by withdrawing. It doesn't mean they don't care. In fact, it means the opposite. Their silence often hides the loudest emotions. Subtle acts like texting back quicker, initiating plans, or sharing emotions are significant signs of love from avoidance, even though they may seem minor to someone with a secure or anxious attachment style. For avoidance, emotional closeness can feel like walking into a storm without an umbrella. Every step closer triggers discomfort, vulnerability, and a deep-rooted fear of being emotionally overwhelmed or losing control. That's why small actions, often overlooked by others, carry so much meaning when they come from someone with avoidant tendencies. When an avoidant person texts back faster than usual, it's more than just a courtesy or habit. It's a shift in their internal world. Typically, avoidants delay responses because they feel emotionally flooded or uncertain about how much intimacy they can tolerate. Responding promptly might feel like relinquishing control or committing to a deeper level of engagement, which can be uncomfortable for them. So when they begin to respond quicker, it often signals that they're starting to feel safe, starting to trust, and testing the waters of connection. They're not just replying, they're reaching. Initiating plans is another powerful, often understated gesture. Avoidants tend to prefer solitude or environments where they can maintain a sense of emotional independence. Being around others, especially someone they have feelings for, puts them in a space where they feel observed, vulnerable, and emotionally available, something they've often spent years avoiding. So when an avoidant reaches out and asks to spend time with someone, it's not just about wanting to hang out. It's about prioritizing that person, overriding their own reflex to retreat, and risking emotional closeness. It's them saying in their own quiet language, I want you in my world. Even more telling is when they begin to share emotions, especially ones that touch on their inner fears, hopes, or personal history. Avoidants are often highly introspective, but rarely vocal about their internal lives. They've trained themselves to be emotionally self-sufficient, and showing emotion, especially in the presence of someone they care about, feels like removing armor they've worn for years. So when they start to express things like anxiety, affection, or even confusion, it's a raw and often uncomfortable experience for them. But it's also a leap toward intimacy. That vulnerability is not accidental. It's a sign of growth, of trust, and of a desire to connect more deeply, even if the words are clumsy or incomplete. These gestures may seem ordinary on the surface. They're not grand romantic declarations or sweeping acts of devotion. But for an avoidant, they represent a powerful inner shift, a loosening of fear, a softening of defenses, and a willingness to show up emotionally. Each one of these actions is like a muscle they haven't used often, and using it comes with tension, hesitation, but they're using it. That matters. For someone who has been conditioned to equate closeness with pain or loss, these subtle signs are anything but small. They are the slow, steady heartbeat of a love that is real, deliberate, and deeply courageous. Their version of I love you often looks like patience, space, and quiet loyalty, not loud passion. For avoidantly attached individuals, love does not always follow the script that popular culture writes. It's not fireworks or spontaneous declarations. It's not constant communication or dramatic gestures. Instead, it's subtle, steady, and often hidden beneath layers of reserve. Their love language is restraint, offering you space without needing to fill every silence, staying consistent in presence, even if they don't always express their feelings in words, and showing up in ways that are less about intensity and more about reliability. Avoidants value autonomy, both theirs and yours. When they love someone, they don't try to control them or suffocate them with attention. In fact, they often express love by giving their partner freedom, time to breathe, to think, to be. While this might seem like detachment to someone unfamiliar with the avoidance world, it's actually a sign of deep respect. They're saying in their own unspoken way, I trust you to be who you are. I don't need to own you to feel close to you. That level of patience, of not forcing closeness and allowing a relationship to evolve naturally, is one of their strongest forms of affection. What's more, their commitment doesn't always show in emotional confessions, but in consistency. They may not always say, I love you, but they show up when it matters. They remember small details. They fix the broken light in your kitchen. They walk your dog when you're sick. These acts may not be romantic in the conventional sense, but they are deeply intentional. For avoidants, actions are often safer than words, and their reliability is their way of creating safety for someone they care about. This quiet loyalty may go unnoticed if you're looking for drama or emotional fireworks, but it's the thread that holds the relationship together over time. Even the act of staying in the relationship, despite their own fears and discomfort with intimacy, can be a massive demonstration of love. Avoidants are wired to flee when things get emotionally intense, to protect themselves from potential loss or disappointment. So if they stay, if they weather the emotional ebbs and flows instead of pulling away, that's not indifference, it's growth. It's love. They're choosing connection over comfort, vulnerability over avoidance. And they often do this silently, without needing praise or recognition. Loud passion may come and go, but the kind of love avoidants offer when they're ready is grounded in quiet strength. They won't overwhelm you with affection, but they'll hold space for you. They'll show you in the smallest ways that you matter. And while they might not verbalize their emotions easily, they will prove them over and over in the things they do, the freedom they give, and the patience they offer. Their love isn't loud, but it's deep, and once earned, it is often steadfast, enduring, and deeply loyal. Avoidance needs safety, not pressure. Pushing them rarely works, but creating a secure environment encourages connection. At the core of the avoidant attachment style is a deep-rooted belief that emotional closeness puts them at risk of being hurt, engulfed, or losing their identity. For many avoidantly attached individuals, their earliest experiences taught them that vulnerability led to rejection or criticism, so they learned to rely on themselves and keep others at arm's length. In a relationship, this often looks like withdrawal, aloofness, or a hesitation to engage in emotional intimacy. But underneath those behaviors is not a lack of care, it's a need for emotional safety they rarely know how to ask for. When someone tries to force emotional closeness, push for answers, or demand immediate vulnerability from an avoidant, it often backfires. The avoidant may shut down completely, become defensive, or retreat further. Not because they want to hurt their partner, but because their nervous system interprets emotional pressure as a threat. Their coping mechanism is to distance themselves from the very intimacy they crave, simply because it feels overwhelming or intrusive. In their world, too much closeness, too fast, activates a fear that they'll lose control of their emotions or be consumed by someone else's needs. The result is a paradox. They want connection, but they feel safest when they are emotionally distant. The key to building a meaningful connection with an avoidant lies in creating a sense of emotional security, not urgency. When an avoidant feels that they have room to breathe, when they're not constantly being asked to change or perform emotionally, they begin to relax. Trust is built slowly, not through pressure or persuasion, but through consistency, reliability, and emotional stability. When they see that you can handle your own emotions without overwhelming them with yours, when you show that you're not trying to fix them or break down their walls, but simply offering a safe place for them to step into when they're ready, that's when connection starts to grow. Avoidants often thrive in environments where they feel emotionally self-directed but not abandoned. They want to know that the door to intimacy is open, but they don't want to be shoved through it. Giving them space doesn't mean giving up on closeness, it means respecting their emotional process. That respect builds trust, and trust is the foundation for any deepening relationship. When they sense you're not a threat to their independence or emotional stability, they begin to show up more authentically. It might start with small disclosures or random moments of physical affection, but these are signs of a budding sense of safety. It's important to remember that emotional safety doesn't mean walking on eggshells or suppressing your own needs. It means offering calm, grounded energy that doesn't demand but invites. It means allowing connection to unfold rather than chasing it. For avoidance, love grows in the space where they feel accepted, not coerced, where connection feels like a choice, not a requirement. You're not responsible for fixing them, but recognizing growth matters more than perfection. When in a relationship with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing it's your job to draw them out, to heal their wounds, or to help them get better at love. The truth is, healing is not something you can do for someone else. Real lasting change has to come from within. What you can do, what makes the difference, is creating the kind of environment where growth is noticed, encouraged, and appreciated, even when it's imperfect or slow. People with avoidant tendencies often carry a deep fear of being emotionally controlled, criticized, or not good enough. This fear isn't always obvious. It can be hidden under silence, independence, or even defensiveness. But underneath, many of them wonder if they're capable of loving someone in the way the person needs. That's why pointing out what they lack or constantly demanding more from them can reinforce their shame and make them withdraw further. What helps isn't fixing them or pointing out all the ways they fall short. It's seeing the small steps they take as signs of effort and meeting those efforts with acknowledgement instead of criticism. Growth for an avoidant doesn't always look like emotional outpourings or dramatic shifts. It can be subtle. Maybe they opened up about something from their past. Maybe they stayed in a difficult conversation instead of shutting us up. Maybe they reached out first or offered affection without prompting. These moments are significant. They are signs of someone doing something different from what their instincts tell them to do. For someone wired to protect themselves through distance, every moment of emotional presence takes effort. When that effort is seen and valued, it encourages more of it. When it's ignored or dismissed, it confirms their internal belief that closeness will always be met with disappointment or rejection. You are not their therapist, their savior, or the solution to their pain, but you are part of the relationship system. The way you respond to their growth can either help reinforce progress or push them back into old patterns. That doesn't mean tolerating emotional neglect or abandoning your own needs. It means learning to see the human behind the defense mechanisms. It means celebrating progress without expecting perfection. If they are willing to grow, however slowly, however messily, that willingness itself is a form of love. Love isn't about molding someone into your ideal. It's about honoring the direction they're headed, not how fast they get there. No one shows up perfectly healed or emotionally fluent. But if someone is trying, if they're stepping outside their comfort zone, even in small ways, that effort deserves recognition. When growth is acknowledged, it creates safety. And when safety is present, intimacy can thrive. What matters is not fixing someone into who you want them to be, but standing beside them as they become more of who they are capable of being. Love from an avoidant is courageous because every step toward you challenges their wiring. That effort is a powerful form of love. People with avoidant attachment styles aren't indifferent to connection. They're often deeply longing for it. But their emotional systems have been trained to associate closeness with risk. Their earliest experiences may have taught them that being vulnerable leads to disappointment, abandonment, or rejection. So their natural instinct becomes self-protection, keeping people at a safe emotional distance, staying in control, and avoiding situations that require too much vulnerability. When someone like this chooses to move closer, even in the smallest ways, it goes against the very programming that has kept them safe for so long. What looks like a small step to you, like holding your hand in public, saying how they feel, or agreeing to spend more time together, is often a massive internal leap for them. Their mind may be full of warning signals, questioning whether it's safe, wondering if they're going to lose their independence or get hurt again. Yet they still choose to lean in. That choice is an act of bravery. They are not only battling the fear of closeness, but also the fear of losing themselves in the process. That's why love from an avoidant should never be measured by how easily they express affection, but by how often they challenge their own comfort zone to show up for you. Every time an avoidant resists the urge to pull away during conflict, every time they allow themselves to stay present instead of shutting down, they are demonstrating love in the most personal and vulnerable way they know how. It may not look like the fairy tale version of romance, but it's something even more valuable. It's intentional. It means they are choosing you even when it's hard. They're choosing to grow even when it's uncomfortable. They're choosing to trust even when their past tells them not to. This kind of love doesn't come wrapped in grand gestures or overflowing words. It reveals itself in moments of stillness, in the space they make for you in their carefully structured world. It shows up in how they try, perhaps awkwardly, perhaps imperfectly, to be present in ways they never have before. These efforts, though often quiet, are monumental. They reflect a love that has been hard-earned, not handed out freely or impulsively. It's a love that demands reflection, risk, and transformation. To love as an avoidant is to face fears that are wired into the nervous system. It's to open the door just a little, knowing that doing so could hurt. And yet they open it anyway. Not all at once, not without hesitation, but consistently enough that you can see the truth behind their struggle. They care deeply. And that care, when expressed through genuine effort, is not only real, it's incredibly courageous. Because in their world, closeness isn't easy. So when they take a step toward you, that step is their version of a leap.